Okay, looks like we are live, Broncos country, but you guys know the drill by now. We got to let the stream breathe just for a second here and make sure that everything is nice and stable all across the YouTube platform. Welcome in, Broncos country. Obviously, not good news for the Denver Broncos tonight as they fall 34-27 to the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers complete a season sweep over the Broncos this season, and the Broncos fail on their first of three opportunities to clinch a playoff berth. It started off well for the Broncos. They led 21-10. It looked like that was going to be the score heading into halftime, but the Chargers, they call timeout after the Broncos have a drive that stalls out deep in their own territory right before halftime, and the Broncos get a kick-catch interference penalty that puts the Chargers in position for a free kick, something that has not been pulled off in the NFL since 1976. They converted, got the 3 points on it, and from that point forward, the momentum completely shifted in the direction of the Chargers, and the Broncos were just never able to recapture it. The Broncos did come out, their first possession out of halftime. They kicked a field goal, but after that, it was just a struggle. Offensively, they were backed up against a wall, but defensively was the real issue for the Broncos. This loss is 100% on the defense. I'm absolutely putting this loss on the overall execution and lack of discipline on the defensive side of the ball. The fact that they had so many stupid back-breaking penalties. You have that killer special teams penalty on the kick-catch interference. Then there was 2 offsides penalties and the personal foul penalty on Justin Sternad. That was the Chargers' first offensive possession out of halftime, and that basically gift-wrapped the Chargers points. The Broncos gift-wrapped the Chargers. I want to say it was almost 13 points or something like that in this game. Broncos penalties on the defensive side of the ball is why they lost this game. We also saw some poor tackling. We saw them blow some coverages. I know it's easy to blame Vance Joseph and blame Sean Payton as the play callers, but at the end of the day, the players have to go out there and they have to find a way to execute, and they just could not get that done in this game. Because of that, the Denver Broncos are now sitting in a position where they've got to win one of their next 2 games against the Cincinnati Bengals or the Kansas City Chiefs. The hope is that if they do have to come down to that Kansas City Chiefs game, the Chiefs will already have the number 1 seed locked up and they can rest their starters in that game. At this point, the Denver Broncos can pretty much kiss anything higher than the 7th seed goodbye. The Denver Broncos, that's kind of a blessing and a curse, right? Because if you win the game against Cincinnati and you punch your ticket in, you're guaranteed to be able to rest starters against the Chiefs. But you've got to now focus on this Bengals game. In the wise words of Bill Belichick, we are on to Cincinnati. We got Devin in the house saying, I hope Buffalo can get the number 1 seed. At this point, it really benefits the Broncos better if the Chiefs get the number 1 seed and they get it heading into that final week. It gives you some space cushion that the Chiefs might start their backups if Denver can't beat Cincinnati. But at this point, you've got to find a way to beat a Bengals team that has struggled in the back half of the year, man. Their defense is awful. And offensively, the Broncos moved the ball well. That wasn't really the issue for them. Again, they were just kind of put at odds ends there at the end of the game, especially in that second half, because defensively they were just putting them in too many bad spots. I thought that there was a couple of plays that Nix would want to have back. KBS says Nick should have hit Mims. That's a play every NFL quarterback should have been able to make. His footwork was bad and he threw it too late. It's that simple. Bose hit that play before. He just didn't hit it there in a key moment. That did hurt, but this loss is not on Bo Nix. This loss is literally on penalties on the defensive side of the ball and on special teams, completely killing the momentum of the game. There were a couple of other plays as well. You can point to a couple of sacks that Bo Nix took that killed an offensive drive or two there in the second half. But the Broncos never would have been in that position if they didn't have those stupid penalties on defense. And then in the end of the game there, defensively, they collapsed. They had some bad run fits. They had some bad coverage. It just was not good enough in this game, Broncos country. And as a result, your Denver Broncos are currently sitting at 9-6. And like I said earlier, you can pretty much kiss that 6th seed goodbye. You can definitely kiss the 5th seed goodbye. The Broncos are going to be lucky at this point, winning one of their next 2 games to get in as the 7th seed. I thought the refs were okay. What do you think? I agree. I actually thought the refs did a pretty good job. There's one play where I definitely did not agree, and that was the horse collar, because it looked like Justin Herbert had hold of Jonathan Cooper's face mask. So that should have been offsetting penalties. I don't think that one was officiated fairly. However, I think overall the Broncos, they just shot themselves in the foot. The penalties were just completely warranted. They were. These were Broncos penalties that weren't bad calls, man. They were completely warranted calls. What was the flag count? Refs seemed to call a pro-Chargers game. I disagree. I think that they were, for the most part, fair, except for like 1 or 2 plays. But let's go ahead and actually bring in the penalty count here. We'll go ahead and bring in the stat line for this game. So looking at it, penalties. Coming to the box score, not the box score, team stats. I apologize. Penalties. Denver had 7 penalties for 61 yards in this game. The Chargers had just 2 penalties for 8 yards. That just goes to show who the more disciplined football team is at the end of the day. Let's go ahead and I guess briefly go over the box score. Bo Nix on the day was 29 for 40, 263 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Had a couple plays he definitely would want back, but I thought Bo Nix played a pretty decent game. This loss is not on him. The run game for the Broncos, it started off strong and then kind of tapered off throughout the game. Audric Estime should have gotten more touches, in my opinion. 9 carries for 48 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, and a touchdown. Once it was clear that he was the hot hand in this one, you should have rode him a lot more than you did. And unfortunately, they were still trying to sprinkle in Javonte Williams and Blake Watson. And I think that killed some of the momentum on the offensive side of the ball. Leading receiver on the day, Marvin Mims, 3 catches for 62 yards. Cortland Sutton, 5 catches for 50 yards. Javonte catches for 29 yards. Troy Franklin, 2 catches, 25 yards. He had a drop. Devon Bailey, 2 catches, 21 yards, and a touchdown. Lucas Kroll, 3 catches for 21 yards. So, again, man, at the end of the day, you started off so strong offensively, but those penalties completely shot you in the foot. As far as the Chargers are concerned, Justin Herbert, he was not pressured as often as he should have been in this one. The Broncos did not do a good job generating pressure. He was 23 of 31, 284 yards, 9.2 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, only 2 sacks. He was able to scramble out of a couple of sacks as well. 8 carries for 28 yards. That's including kneel downs. Gus Edwards, 14 carries for 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. And actually, Herbert lost quite a bit of yardage kneeling down at the end of that game. So really, that stat line is deflated by quite a bit. Kamani Vidal, 5 carries for 24 yards. Ladd McConkey, he got loose a couple of times for 6 catches for 87 yards. Joshua Palmer, 3 catches for 41 yards. Looking at some of the defensive stats here, Brandon Jones, I thought he had a pretty good day. Led the team in tackles with 10. Cody Barton with 7 tackles. Chris Abrams-Drain had an interception. Drew Sanders had a sack. Dondre Tillman also had a sack. But outside of that, you weren't able to generate any pressure at all on Justin Herbert. Yeah, man, it sucks. It definitely sucks. Mick Swagger says, defense letting you all down. Yep, definitely. The lack of execution, just disgusting. It really is. All right, guys, listen, I'm going to have to go ahead and refresh this for just a second because of connection issues. I'm going to refresh. We'll be right back. Just give me 5 seconds. And just like that, we are back. Mick says Dennis Allen will be Denver's defensive coordinator next year. At this point, I don't think it's a given that Vance Joseph leaves for a head coaching job, and the Broncos aren't firing him. I can guarantee you that. And if he does leave, I think at this point, it's probably going to be Jim Leonhard as the Broncos defensive coordinator, not Dennis Allen. The Broncos are the better team. They lost because of undisciplined defensive players. 100%. That is the correct assessment. I agree with Gage. The Broncos need to get a number one receiver. Nonetheless, some consistent weapons. Absolutely. Absolutely, man. That was definitely a problem for you. But at the end of the day, this loss is not on the offense. This loss is on the defense 110%. Sean handicapped Bo with not letting him throw as much today. I don't know. I actually thought that they pivoted away from the run game at times to let Bo throw when they shouldn't. That's the disagreement that I really have here with the play calling from Sean Payton. We got Ray Ann in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Says the refs really hate us, don't they? Denver's got to stop putting themselves in bad positions. I know it's easy to blame the refs. I know that Broncos fans wanted to say that was pass interference there. But at the end of the day, the Broncos were undisciplined with that kick-catch interference call, that personal foul on Justin Sternad, and that was definitely a penalty. He lowered his shoulder into Herbert's head. That's going to get called 10 times out of 10. Just too many sloppy penalties, and then 2 offside penalties on that possession where if you hadn't had those stupid penalties, especially that stupid personal foul, the Chargers would have been kicking a field goal in that situation. The Broncos wouldn't be able to maintain their lead. Instead, Chargers, they go downfield, they score, and all the momentum that was in favor of the Broncos was gone. Defense and special teams just let the game go. Yeah, that's it. Sometimes the simplest explanation is the most logical one, and that's the case here. Defense and special teams let this game get out of hand. All right, Broncos country, we're going to go ahead and dip out of this post-game stream so we can bring you guys the press conferences. Sean Payton has already taken the podium. Before we dip out of here, guys, if you could just do me, I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are both free and easy ways to show your support. Helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out, and it helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country, just like you and me. All right, guys, and until next time, I'm your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.